going on? It's Ash here coming at you today in Clash Royale. I am back with Bradank on the channel for the second time. Bradank, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great.
I'm just gonna fess up, man. I'm gonna tell the people. I'm gonna tell them what happened. So we recorded this whole video last night, and it was awesome, man. I hope we can recreate that magic. And wouldn't you know, due to some sound file issue that I had on my end, everything was kind of had to be scrapped. So today we're back at it again, but I'm super excited because to me, you can't really ruin an episode like this. You do a great job of explaining decks, and this deck is something that I know you guys are really going to enjoy. Today's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to review the deck, we're going to put a replay on the background, and then we're going to do some play-by-play. We're really going to kind of hone in on the interactions between the cards. And Bradank, I don't know about you, man, but I feel like we can do better than the one we recorded. What do you think?
For sure.
All right, so tell us a little bit about this deck. Really quick, precursor here is I shared a deck like this a long time ago, a fast cycle deck that actually works, that actually wins grand challenges, and I called it like a deck that can make you better at the game. And you actually pitched this deck to me about a week ago or so, and you said, Ash, this is the type of deck that will make you a better player. So why don't we start out there? Talk about why this deck can make you a better player, A, and B, maybe some of the key cards in the deck.
Okay, so this deck has an extremely fast cycle, and you see that it doesn't really have a big spell, meaning that you'll have to be really savvy on defense and really know the certain interactions between the cards in order to facilitate a good defense and have a nice, sort of chipping effect on the tower where you can constantly chip away. And this deck really allows you to sort of focus on both the macro and the sort of micro strategies involved in the game. In terms of macro, in terms of which tower to attack, the sort of overall how to cycle, and then you sort of get to the micro interactions involving the interactions between the cards and how to defend really mechanically and try to activate King's Tower and try to protect the princesses. And those are really important things that allow you to become better at the game.
Yeah, and I found that, my big takeaway, which I'm actually happy we're re-recording this because it wasn't until the end of the video where I really realized the true value in this deck, in my opinion, and that is just teaching yourself to identify what your opponent's best card is and what your best card is to counter or the win condition, and then vice versa. It really teaches you how to outcycle really quickly when your opponent doesn't have their key card, because it's there's no deck out there that can outcycle this deck right now in the meta at all, right? Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit more about what you're trying to do with a deck like this in terms of where do you even start?
So your main goal of this deck is to try to trip away with the Goblin Barrel. So what I like to do is that I like to reserve the Ice Spirit to use in quick succession with the Goblin Barrel. So I like to chip away with the Ice Spirit in combination with the Goblin Barrel. And that really puts a lot of pressure in a meta that doesn't really have log in it. A lot of people are running Zap, and you can pretty easily outcycle Zap, especially in a lot of the heavier decks involving Mega Knight, Skeleton Barrel, those type of things. And in this deck, you also have the Princess, so your goal is to try to stack Princesses, especially on defense, and making sure that you protect her as best you can. If you protect the Princess, you'll end up getting forcing your opponent to use other cards that they want to use on offense on your princess, and that sort of breaks their combo cards, and it enables you to basically put your opponent in an uncomfortable position and allows you to continuously cycle and chip away.
This deck is so fast at 2.3 that I feel like a common mistake with a deck like this might be, especially if you want to get better, right, might just be it strikes me that it might be easy to get into the habit of just throwing away elixir on one elixir or two elixir cards. How do you kind of combat against that?
Yeah, so I think that at the same time as you don't want to be throwing away elixir, I think that it's you should not be at 10 elixir very often in this deck. I think that it's easy. I think it's better to just sometimes if you're at even 5 elixir and you notice that they don't have many good responses to this card, you can go for a Goblin Barrel, even if you're at 5 or 6 elixir. But at the same time, you need to be wary about how you're cycling. So for example, if you're facing a Golem deck, you need to be aware of, okay, when am I overspending? And if they have enough elixir for a Golem in the back, how can I arrange my cycle so that I can appropriately punish the Golem when they put it in the back? And when should I just hold off and wait and just play defensively, especially when they're sort of building a push?
You know what, Bradank? Let's not just talk about it. Let's show
Yeah.
it. Want to do the play-by-play on the golem replay?
Sure, let's go.
All right, cool. So you might notice there's no 12 wins here. I showed you his Grand Challenge log already on the overlay. But basically, Bradank, through the last the last week or so, he's been picking out like key replays with key interactions against good players. So let's go ahead and start the one against, I believe it's against Tiger here. No, that's the bridge spam. So you can just see the replays here, 20 win on this guy or whatever. This is Dread, and he is the golem dude. Let's go ahead and watch this one. I'm going to go ahead and start it in 3, 2, 1, boom. All right, so tell us a little bit about starting hand here, and as you kind of start to become aware that he's playing a golem deck, how your strategy kind of evolves for the match.
Okay, so my initial reaction is to start with bats because it's a good card to cycle. I don't really like cycling knight because I would rather reserve him for defense. So I see that he immediately starts with a goblin hut, and in this case, I need to attack the opposite lane because this allows him, or this sort of allows me to break up his sort of like need to like constantly pressure that one lane, and it doesn't allow him to like stack troops so that he can sort of attack the lane that he wants to attack. So here, I put my Goblin Barrel, if you notice, in like the safe position, so it can't be NATO'd to the King Tower in case he has NATO. And the goal of this deck is that I need to try to activate the King's Tower early, because that allows me to defend a lot easier, and it's just always a good option to do. And then you have a lot of good answers to a lot of pushes if you're able to activate the King's Tower early. So unfortunately, yeah, that Ice Spirit like sort of got killed by that one Goblin.
Yeah.
But so here I noticed that he's probably playing the Golem deck, seeing that he's used Night Witch, Mega Minion, the Goblin Hut. So I realized that he has a lot of damage on the left tower, so I need to start pressuring the right tower. And I know that he hasn't moved, like he hasn't played a card in a little while, so I decided to pressure a little bit. And I get some good damage off here.
Do you think that he was going to drop a golem there? Is that why you put so much pressure?
Yeah, I suspected it, but I just wanted to put some pressure since I thought that I was up a bit in Elixir. And here, this is a good tornado on the Royal Ghost. It's a really good idea to tornado the Royal Ghost and cards like the Electro Wizard, cards like the Hog Rider, cards like the Miner, and even the Graveyard. I think in the Graveyard replay, I think you might have been playing that in the background earlier. I quickly NATO'd the Graveyard to the King's Tower early, and that allowed me to basically win the game just playing defense for the rest of the game.
Yeah, we actually saw that while you were kind of giving us an outline of the deck. So he just dropped his first golem, I think. So what's going through your mind right now? You see the golem, you obviously do Ice Spirit, Goblin Barrel on the right tower, your favorite combo. Now what are you going to do?
So right now, I cycle the Princess in the back before I barreled, and that allows me to cycle back to her faster. And I need to use the Knight and Bats to buy me a bit of time with the Golem and to sort of soak some hits from like the Night Witch and the Flying Machine.
Wow.
Yeah, and that worked out really effectively for me. And the Princess and the NATO combination allowed me to like really like stop his push. And I cycled back to another princess as well, and he like poisoned 2 princesses, and that's okay. I'd rather him poison 2 princesses than to poison the tower with less health. And that worked out really well for me.
And you said something, too, that I found to be really good yesterday, and that was that with this deck, sometimes against big pushes, it's not enough just to use a princess and a tornado against like a golem push or a really big whatever giant push. Oftentimes with this deck, because you cycle so fast, you said that you're playing 2 or 3 princesses and 2 tornadoes in one push on defense because of cycling.
Exactly. Yeah, 1 princess probably isn't enough, especially if they decide to poison her out, which is why you need to cycle the princess first when you see the golem in the back, and then cycle like a Goblin Barrel plus Ice Spirit or a Knight and an Ice Spirit. But I usually like to use the Knight on defense, especially to soak the hits from like the Flying Machine and the Night Witch, because if you don't, then they sort of accumulate a lot of damage. So I prefer to use the Knight against the Golem and to sort of soak some hits.
Okay, cool. Let's go ahead and watch the replay against Tiger. This is another one against Bridge Spam here. And another Royal Ghost deck. Surprise, surprise, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'm ready to play when you are. 3, 2, 1, play. So yeah, again, just kind of walk us through. We already talked a little bit about opening moves, but it seems like for you, cycling in the back or a Goblin Barrel is usually ideal, or a Princess?
Yeah, a Princess in the back, Bats, and a Goblin Barrel is probably my ideal starting play. Here, instead of opting to use a Knight, I actually used the Tornado to activate the King's Tower early with the Bandit. I think that it's worth it to soak some damage to activate the King's Tower, and especially since there probably isn't a better opportunity to do that in the future, especially against the bridge spam deck.
Yeah, good activation early on, exactly what you want to have happen in this deck.
Yeah, exactly. So here, actually, I don't have the ideal cards to handle the Battle Ram. Usually, to handle the Battle Ram, I like to use my Knight, and especially if it's like really hard. That combination is really hard to stop with this deck, because any response you have to it other than Knight can get poisoned or zapped away. So I really like to use my Knight to just deal some damage, and sometimes I like to NATO the Ram and other troops back if it's the case that like there's a lot of units behind. And here I surround the Royal Ghost with skeletons, but again, I don't have my Knight in cycle, which is pretty unfortunate, so I had to use the Knight sort of last minute to block the Bandit.
Yeah, unfortunately, again, you have to, like, with this deck, part of the element that makes it, that I feel like it really improves you as a player is because you have to kind of identify early what your best counter is and then try to just always cycle to it for that Battle Ram, for example, having that Knight ready. So do you think the opponent made a mistake here by not Battle Ramming, or no?
I don't think that it was a mistake. I think that what he should have done was to just try to build a bigger push with like the Ice Golem and the Battle Ram, because he always sort of had to respond to my Goblin Barrels. So I'm doing here like a pretty good job of forcing him to constantly respond to that lane. And see, he's trying to build a push, but with both lanes. But I don't think he's building a big enough push. I think that he should have played cards in the back and tried to slow roll a push, because bridge spam pushes against this deck usually aren't very good, because I have a lot of cheap cards that allow me to get positive electric trades every single time.
Yeah, and in this matchup too, you can see how much pressure you're keeping up with the Goblin Barrels. It seems like every time one of his little mini pushes or even a bigger push dies down, you're ready with that Goblin Barrel. Talk a little bit about, if you can, about the pressure that you need to keep up with this deck and how that changes depending on what you're facing.
Okay, so with this deck, or with this matchup, you see that my opponent, like earlier, he put a Night Witch in the back, so I knew he was trying to build a push in the left-hand lane, which is precisely why I went with the Goblin Barrel plus Ice Spirit in the right-hand lane. And against any deck, I just like to keep up with the pressure, especially if they want to go opposite lane. So with matchups like you saw earlier with the Goblin Hut, I preferred to put my to attack the lane opposite to the Goblin Hut. And in any case, if you see your opponent trying to build a push in the back with like any card, I prefer to go to the opposite lane.
What if, for example, you already had that one tower down to like 1700 HP or something, like not super low, but you were working your way, chipping away at it. Because this is kind of a chip deck, wouldn't you say all that damage that you already got off the tower, even if it's only like 1000 HP, is not worth to switch lanes, or would you switch lanes?
I would switch lanes anyway, mainly because you need to divide their elixir. If there's such a huge push coming down the lane, let's say that you get like 1000 damage off a right-hand side tower, and they decide to push the same lane as you have, like, as you've done the damage to their tower, I would still go to the opposite lane, because you need to split their efforts. It's impossible to defend like 20-30 elixir pushes with this deck, because they can easily just poison out or just log your princesses, and you end up just not having a good time because you don't have a big spell. So you need to still divide their elixir. So even if you like have done maybe 1500 damage in one lane, I would still switch lanes.
Okay, that's good advice. Because I would never know to do that if you didn't say so. So let's watch the replay against Pipe, against that really annoying minor skeleton barrel deck.
Okay.
And while you're getting there, I do want to give my sponsored shout out of the day to Kareem Class. Thank you for supporting the channel. Kareem, I see you every day in the comments, so I know you'll hear this and see this. Just want to say thank you. All right, let's go ahead and press play against Pipe in 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so this is an annoying deck to face in a regular deck. How do you feel about this matchup with this deck?
I feel like it's a pretty good matchup.
Mm-hmm.
Initially,
what do you think the most difficult matchup is for this deck?
Okay, so the most difficult matchups I feel are any deck with multiple spells such as Log and NATO, and if they have a big spell to finish you out like Rocket. Okay. You don't really see much. I mean, the only prevalent decks I see like that are Hog, Executioner, NATO, or just conventional Log Bait. So those are some of your hardest counters. Stuff like Prince Bait is pretty hard, counters you pretty hard because they do have the Log and the NATO. But you can get around it, and you can. I've actually like shared a replay where I won against it, and also you can like, if it's the worst case, you can actually draw. Like I was like on voice with a friend earlier, and he actually drew out like a matchup against Prince. So I think you can tie that matchup if necessary. But also another tough matchup, as you saw earlier, was Golem. If you are unable to like have a good hand to punish their Golem, it can be tough to sort of defend their pushes.
I gotcha.
Also,
right.
like, sorry, another hard matchup is probably like 3M plus Log. Mainly if like you're trying to defend their 3M pushes and they can just log out your princess, then you have a hard time defending their pushes because you don't have that splash damage and crowd control.
Indeed, yeah. Luckily, not too many people play Log with 3 Muskies, so you're pretty good on
not
that end. But
anymore.
I would like to see the Prince matchup. Maybe we'll do that replay too. We didn't do that one yesterday, but let's do that one before we leave, just because I want to see how you handle a more difficult matchup. But anyway, we're halfway through this match here. Kind of talk us through what's going on.
Okay, so earlier, if you notice, I'm constantly putting my barrel in the safe position so it can't be native to the King's Tower. And he tried to activate the King's Tower early in the game, but he was unable to since I put it in that sort of safe spot. And I continuously do that. Even if he predicts it, it's okay. I'd rather him spend some elixir to defend my Goblin Barrel and not activate the King's Tower than to activate it early on, and I'll have a lot more trouble sort of trying to defend his, try to chip away. So I think a double elixir, I can eventually try to like vary my placements a little bit. So like if he's constantly like tornadoing the Goblin Barrel to one side, I can sort of put my barrel in a position where it'll be NATO'd towards the tower. So being like constantly changing your position for the Goblin Barrel is really important.
I getcha. And also, and I see that we see what we were talking about there, switching it up. Also, in that safe spot where you're using your Goblin Barrel in the first 2 minutes of the game, technically that can still be used to activate, right? It's just very difficult.
Yeah, sometimes it can. You just the opponent just takes a lot of damage, so they can take up to like 1,000 damage if it's used in combination with the Ice Spirit. So it's not a good look for your opponent, even if they try to NATO it to the King's Tower. They can it may do like 500 or so damage, but it's still worth it to get some damage off at least. Yeah.
Okay. So because I'm curious, like how do you activate a King Tower then with that location? Like, is it just RNG, or is there a certain way that you need to place the tornado if you're the opponent?
Oh, if you're the opponent, you need to just place the tornado like really far to your King's Tower. Like not just to the corner, but like into the King's Tower. So like it really forces that one goblin to like activate the King's Tower.
I gotcha. Okay. So back to the match here.
Yeah.
Things are pretty close, but every time I love this matchup because every time he comes at you in the left, you go like harder in the right, it seems.
Exactly. So he's trying to build like skeleton barrel pushes on the left. And you see that he's trying to build a push, but then the skeleton barrel isn't a big threat in itself because I can just zap it away. And I always have my knight in rotation for his miner in case he tries to go for like a minor poison, in which case it's really hard to defend with any card other than knight. And he always has to respond to my goblin barrel or he takes a lot of damage, so he can't build a big push on the left. And that enables me to sort of break up his combo cards and end up winning the game.
Indeed. Let's go ahead and show that Prince Bait NATO matchup, and then we'll call it a vid, man.
Okay.
All right, 3, 2, 1, play. So yeah, this is kind of an annoying match. Before we get into this actual matchup, we're already watching, but can you tell us about countering Royal Ghost? Because you have like a specific method that you like to do on that as well.
Yeah, so there's a specific method you can use to counter the Royal Ghost that it will be really commonly used. So you can use the Ice Spirit, you can use the skeletons to surround the Royal Ghost completely, and you can also use the Ice Spirit. And if you use both in quick succession, you'll be able to counter the Royal Ghost by itself and take no damage in your tower. So it'll fully kill the Royal Ghost. Additionally, I really like to use the Tornado to activate the King's Tower with the Royal Ghost. I mean, a lot of people know that, but I see a lot of people who don't, and they just try to use the Knight. But I think that the NATO is a lot more effective way of dealing with it, sort of like a Hog Rider.
Yeah, and then after you have the King Tower activated via the Royal Ghost Tornado, all the rest of the Royal Ghosts become that much easier to counter because of that 1-2 punch and you have the King Tower's help.
Exactly. Like sometimes if they Royal Ghost in the opposite lane, let's say I have a princess in the field and I already activated my King's Tower, but then they use the Royal Ghost to to kill my princess. I sometimes even leave the Royal Ghost alone and the King Tower and the Crown Tower. If of course if I can take the damage, I'll just take it in that one lane that hasn't sustained as much damage.
For sure. Okay, so here we are back to this matchup here. So far, so good on your end. But you take that Prince hit there.
Yeah. So I realized that I can't defend both really that well, so I'm just trying to make sure that the damage is split between the towers and just hope for the best, I guess.
Because with a deck like this, you're really not coming back from when a tower down early, especially, right?
Exactly. My one hope is that he doesn't have a big spell. So if I defend well enough, and if I can sort of like finesse his barrels, or sorry, finesse like with the barrel, and
Like you
to
just
try to
did.
make him, yeah. See, he just missed his log over there. Like a lot of times, if I had like a princess coming down one lane, and if she's at the bridge, I don't want to give him a good log and like allow him to log both my barrel and the princess, which is why sometimes I like to do tricky barrels to try to finesse him out.
Really nice kite there.
Yeah, I know that like the Royal Ghost, if he's still invisible, two skeletons will like don't like know that he's there, so they'll continue walking in the opposite lane. So that allows me to pull him to the opposite lane and
Awesome.
like take care of him in other ways.
Yeah,
And
it's
here-
just like you can see you cycling. By the way, it's crazy.
yeah, I'm constantly trying to cycle princesses to take out his goblin gang. And you saw there that I actually outcycled his log, and I'm not sure that he had NATO in hand either, so he's forced to use goblin gang, but he still sustained a lot of damage.
Wow, this is a crazy matchup in terms of just like if you actually watch it, how many cards you're playing and some of these exchanges, it's insane.
Yeah, for sure. Here I'm sort of scared because his prince almost touches my tower. I was actually really scared right there.
Yeah. Oh my
I know that I have a
God.
bit of a counter push here, and I think that he used his log earlier, so I used like a weird barrel. Like I
Wow.
like to change the position of the barrel so that like he can't constantly NATO at the exact same spot, and that sort of messed him up there.
That was crazy, man. Good job. That was such an intense match, and it just like watching the replay, I think sometimes doesn't even convey how difficult that could be. Just like all you know between the NATOs and the skeletons and Ice Spirit, it was just crazy. So good job, man. Hey, before we let you go, I actually, you know what? I think we did it. I think this video was better than the other video. A little bit longer, but I'm happy we showed that last replay. Before we let you go, any shout outs, anything like that, man?
Oh yeah, I'd like to shout out first of all Dank Gannon, and I think he posted on Twitter this deck, and I found it from him. I think he found it on Orange Boy's channel. And oh, also I forgot to tell you just earlier. There's a good interaction. Sorry, this is going back to like the deck, but there's a good interaction with the Mega Knight where it's a really common interaction where you can activate the King's Tower using just skeletons and a tornado. So put the skeletons in the kill zone and then tornado the Mega Knight to the King's Tower. And that's a really good way to activate the King's Tower. Just like, sorry, I just forgot to go over that earlier.
No,
but,
no, it's
yeah.
good knowledge, man. Dropping knowledge.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. All right.
And-
Cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, other shout outs, I'd like to shout out my clan from like Synergy Strike. I have a lot of buddies there, so just wanted to shout them out. And yeah, I think that's it.
All right, man. Well, thank you for coming on the channel. If I can dig up that video by Orange Boy, I'll definitely include it in a links in the description, along with your social media and stuff like that. Are you still coaching as well? Are you available for that, or?
Yeah, for sure. I'm still doing a lot of coaching. Right now, I'm doing a lot of like mortar coaching, a lot of GC coaching in particular. So let me know if any of you guys want coaching in those particular decks.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you again for coming on the channel. Really enjoyed this video.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm honored to be on the channel.
No problem. All right, guys, so that is going to do it. Huge shout out to Bren Chong, my YouTube sponsor. You can find his information in the description below as well. Hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did. Thanks for watching, and as always, take care, guys.